Cyberpunk Edgerunners Ending Explained. This latest animated series to hit the platform is something a bit different. Set in the futuristic world inside of Night City, we witness David Martinez undergo a journey of self-fulfillment, and also the completing of the journey of the others that he looked up to after devastation and love impacted his life. So with that, I thought I'd recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from this first season of the show. So let's get into it. Here is Cyberpunk Edgerunners Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The series opened up with us witnessing David Martinez, who was an individual who wasn't necessarily in the strongest financial situation at school, but we saw him hack his way through updates that allowed him to keep up. However, it all went terribly wrong and caused the system to fail. This was where we witnessed two main things arise. One was the fight that he got into, and also the death of his mother. His mother was killed in the crossfire, which caused a car accident, and we saw that despite the fact that he was rebellious, after she was gone, he realized that she only wanted the best for him, and that was the reason that she was putting him through the elite school that cost her a fortune to keep up with. She had dreams of him being at the top of the Aracana Tower, which was the corporation that essentially ruled over the city. Following his mother's death, he was struggling in terms of finances and also mentally. This was when we then saw the fight with the kid at school was what spurred him on to go to Doc, and to get him to put the Sandevistan inside of him. This was something that would essentially enable him to have enhanced speed and powers when moving. He stumbled across this because his mother was working alongside Maine, who was part of the Edgerunner crew that we saw him join later on. She took it from an individual whilst she was on her job, and then following her death, David discovered it. We heard that before David did it, it was an upgrade that not everybody would be able to handle, and it should only be used around 2 to 3 times a day. But we saw that David was special, in the sense that he was able to use it up to about 10 times a day. We saw David join a group of Edgerunners after being tricked into being taken there by Lucy. This was where we met Maine and the rest of the team, and it was shown to us that Maine was originally supposed to get the Sandevistan to upgrade himself, as he was an individual that was gradually becoming more machine than human. We saw this being an underlying theme in the show, and the cyberpsychosis that came along with it the more that a person was transforming. David was an individual who at first was quite reluctant to upgrade himself, and was content with his human form. But as more and more of his crew started succumbing to psychosis, and then his idol and inspiration, which was Maine, succumbed to it, we ended up cutting forward a few years and we saw that he drastically upgraded. When working as a runner in the crew under Maine, we saw them take an individual called Tanaka, who was the father of the boy that David had a fight with, and was also head of the training facility for Arasaka. Lucy, who was a net runner, was inside of him, and as she was searching through his data, we saw that she found something that changed her moving forward. This all occurred on the day that Maine and Dorio were killed, and from that moment on she left the group, but she didn't say why. She just stated that she had to do something. This was then when we saw that David had upgraded himself, and he was now leading the crew that Maine once led. They were carrying out jobs, but it was the one that came in from former middleman Faraday that got them back on the payroll for big bucks. David was still struggling with the death of his mother even after all of these years, and he kept her ashes and a photo of them together on a table in his now extremely lavish apartment that he shared with Lucy. David's condition was deteriorating and cyberpsychosis was imminent due to the mass upgrades that he was doing to himself, the use of the Sandevistan to an extremity, and also because the medication that he was taking wasn't proving to be as effective. As Doc said, it can only delay the side effects, not remove them completely. As the final few episodes went on, we saw that there was a military project called the Cyberskeleton which Tanaka thought David would be the perfect candidate for, due to him being able to withstand the Sandevistan to the point where no other person could. This was a piece of tech that made the individual more machine than man, but it made them extremely powerful. However, it wasn't even in testing yet. That's why they wanted David to be a lab rat. This led Faraday to work with Arasaka to get David into the suit, and to also get the data from Lucy that she had from when she was inside of Tanaka. They used Kiwi, who was part of the Edgerunner crew, as a pawn from the inside to infiltrate from within, and we saw her take down Lucy and give her to Faraday. However, she got what was coming to her in the end when Faraday did eventually betray her. This led Faraday to create a setup to get the crew, which was led by David, into open land where he'd be forced to enter into the suit, which we saw him do after the pressure that was put upon him, and also with Faraday faking a call from Lucy where he made out like she told him to. This was then when we saw all hell break loose, and the power that it held. But we did see that it was causing David's psychosis to increase and for his hallucinations to be extremely present where he didn't know 100% where he was a lot of the time, resembling that of his idol Maine. We saw him manage to rescue Lucy in the city. The myth and legend that we heard of earlier on in the show, Adam Smasher, turned out to be something that was true, and we saw him come face to face with David in the Cyberskeleton, where they were both relatively evenly matched. However, we did see David ending up being destroyed by him due to the fact that his meds had worn off and he had none left, meaning that he was rendered powerless. David died fulfilling everything that he wanted to. He saved Lucy, he became the man that Maine saw inside of him, and he also reached the top of the Aracana Tower, just like his mother wanted him to. David was a character that acted on emotions more than others, and the trauma that he'd been through weighed on his mind heavily. He wasn't a natural in the position that he was in, despite it seeming as though he was. I feel he adopted the role rather than it coming natural to him. Just like when we saw him kill the bystander, it transported him back to the accident that occurred with his mother, and it showed that there was still a human inside of the machine that he'd now become. Once Lucy was saved, we saw her fulfill her dream of going to the moon, where for a brief moment she saw a younger, less machine-like David, almost similar to the time from when they first met, but it turned out that it was just a memory. David had always promised that he'd take her to the moon, and despite him not physically being there, he was in her mind. She cared about him a lot, and all she wanted was for him to survive, even if it meant her own demise. I thought this show was a good one. It was slightly different for the platform, but it landed the execution well. In delivering a set of characters that you form an attachment to in a short amount of time, it had action, emotion, character development, and a story that had me on the edge of my seat. Despite David being killed and there being no more of him or most of the main cast that we watched, it still feels like there's a lot of the world to explore in another season if it were to be commissioned. So I can't wait to see what more the show has to offer within the likes of Night City and the dystopian world that sits within it. So, there you have it. Cyberpunk Edgerunners Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos such as Endings Explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the I button. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you want to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @BrainPilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. What did you think of the show? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.